So, for context, I'm 38, my husband Mark is 41, and we've been married for 12 years with 2 kids, 7 and 10. Things between us haven't been perfect, but I honestly thought we were in a just tired and overworked phase, not a marriage falling off a cliff phase. Mark suggested we take a family vacation to reconnect. His exact words were, "Let's go somewhere warm, somewhere we can reset." Sounds sweet, right? Well, we picked this gorgeous family-friendly resort near the Sahara. Pools, spas, kids club, the works. I imagined family breakfasts, relaxing by the water. Maybe even a romantic moment or two if the kids magically behaved. But literally from the moment we arrived, something felt off. Mark was fidgety, checking his phone constantly, laughing at messages he wouldn't let me see. And every time I asked, he'd hit me with a dismissive, bitchy, "Relax, it's work. You wouldn't get it." He kept talking about freedom, adventure, and living life, like he was some kind of midlife crisis philosopher sitting on a camel in the desert. But I told myself to breathe, enjoy the vacation, and not ruin it over weird vibes. Then, on the second morning, before I even finished my coffee, he announced, "I'm going quad biking. Across the Sahara. Alone." Just like that. No discussion. No asking if I'd be okay watching the kids solo. No plan. He just stood there, sunglasses on, chest puffed out like he was starring in his own budget action movie. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there in my swimsuit at the breakfast table thinking, who goes quad biking alone on a family vacation? When Mark said he was going quad biking across the Sahara alone, I honestly thought he was joking. Who leaves their wife and kids at a resort to go tear through sand dunes like some single dude trying to impress his imaginary fan club? But no, he doubled down. He claimed, in his usual dramatic, slightly bitchy tone, that he needed time to clear his head and feel alive again. "Bro, you're 41. Not filming a Red Bull commercial." Asked him how long he'd be gone. He shrugged. "Couple hours, maybe all day," he said. "Depends how I feel." Yeah, because that's exactly how Sahara treks work, like ordering a smoothie. He grabbed his backpack, which, weirdly, looked a bit too full for a day trip, and practically jogged out of the resort like a teenager sneaking out after curfew. The kids immediately asked where Dad was going, and I had to lie and say, "Daddy's going on an adventure." Meanwhile, I had that twisty stomach feeling, the same one you get right before something awful happens. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't paranoia. It was instinct. I took the kids to the pool, trying to distract myself, but every time Mark's towel stayed untouched on the lounge chair, I felt a pit forming in my chest. Then around noon, one of the resort staff walked by and casually mentioned, "Oh, your husband left with some other guests." Such a lively group. I froze. "Other guests?" I asked. The staff member nodded and said they were 2 young women from France and a guy from Spain. "They were all laughing a lot," she added. Laughing. Mark. With 2 women. And that's when the weirdness skyrocketed. Because Mark had told me, very specifically, that he was going alone. My hands started shaking. Not because of the women, but because of the lie. That's when I checked his location on my phone, something I never do unless someone is late or lost. And guess what? He had turned his location off. He had never done that before. Not once. And that's when my heart dropped into my stomach because suddenly it wasn't about quad biking anymore. It was about what and who he didn't want me to find. The moment I saw his location was turned off, I swear my whole body went cold. Mark didn't even know how to update his phone half the time, but suddenly he knew how to hide where he was? Yeah. No. I tried to calm myself down. Maybe his battery died. Maybe the signal was bad. Maybe he was being dramatic and wanted me time. But then, around 1 p.m., I got a message on WhatsApp. Not from Mark. From a number I didn't recognize. It was a picture. And my stomach flipped. It was Mark on a quad, but not alone. He was riding with 2 women sitting behind him, both wearing crop tops, both clearly having the time of their lives. Mark had that dumb, overconfident smile he gets when he's trying too hard to impress someone. And the caption? "Your husband is very funny face with tears of joy, great day." No name. No explanation. Just that. I stared at the screen for a full minute before I even realized I had stopped breathing. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped my phone. Then another message popped up. "He says he is single." Really? I felt something sharp in my chest, a mixture of rage and humiliation and disbelief. I wanted to scream, cry, throw the phone into the pool. Instead, I messaged back, "I'm his wife. We're here on a family vacation." There was a long pause. Then, "Oh, I think you should come to the desert tour base." Tour base? Desert? Why? Asked why, but the person just sent a pin location somewhere out in the desert dunes and wrote, "You should see for yourself." At this point, my brain was like, this cannot be happening. This has to be some prank. Mark is stupid, but he's not this stupid, right? But the pit in my stomach said otherwise. I told the kids we were going to grab snacks and took them to the resort's daycare. Thank God they had one. Then ordered a taxi to the pin. The entire ride, my mind was racing. What if he's hurt? What if this is a scam? What if someone robbed him? What if he really IS with those women? But nothing prepared me for what I saw when I got there. Because Mark wasn't just quad biking. He was living his best, "I'm a single wild guy on vacation" fantasy. And he looked very comfortable doing it. The moment the taxi pulled up to the desert tour base, I could hear the music before I even stepped out. Loud, thumping club music, in the middle of the Sahara. Of course. I walked past a bunch of quads, sand-covered helmets, and people drinking cold beer under a flimsy tent roof. Everyone looked sunburnt, sweaty, and way too happy for my current emotional state. Then I saw him. Mark. My 41-year-old husband, father of two, supposed family man, supposed solo adventurer, sitting at a table with 3 women around him, not 2, and he had the nerve to look like some sort of desert Casanova. He was laughing, head thrown back, wearing sunglasses indoors, holding a beer like he was shooting a commercial for Bad Decisions Light. And then, as if this wasn't humiliating enough, one of the women literally fed him a piece of fruit off a skewer. I froze. For a moment, I genuinely couldn't move. My heart wasn't just breaking. It felt like it was dissolving. Then a guide noticed me standing there and whispered, "You're the wife, yes?" I nodded, unable to speak. He sighed and muttered, "Yeah, I thought so," before walking away like he was about to witness a crime scene. Mark finally noticed me when one of the women turned and said, Isn't that your sister?" Mark whipped off his sunglasses and paled so fast I almost felt bad. Almost. His brilliant first words? "Babe, you're early." Early? It was 2 p.m. What was I early for? His Sahara harem. I walked up to the table, adrenaline shaking through my veins. The women looked confused. One asked, "I thought you said you weren't married?" Mark, sweating like the desert just got hotter, stammered, It's complicated. She doesn't understand my need for space." Space? This man had a whole audience of beach bar Barbies and wanted space? I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Mark, put the beer down. We're leaving." He tried to smile. Actually smile. Like I was overreacting to him hosting a Sahara girls' night. "Babe, relax. I'm just being social." Social? You don't get fed fruit by strangers while you're married with kids and call it social. And then, because he always finds a way to make things worse, he added, "It's not like I'm cheating." The French girl snorted so loudly her drink nearly came out her nose. I swear for a moment I saw actual red. I stood there, staring at him, trying to decide whether to scream, cry, or push him face first into the nearest sand dune. The women around him were whispering, shaking their heads like, "Wow, this guy is actually insane," which, honestly, I appreciated. Mark kept trying to laugh it off, doing that stupid half-smile he does when he knows he's caught but still thinks he can charm his way out of consequences. "Babe, come on," he said, waving his hand obnoxiously. "You're being dramatic. I just needed some fun. You were with the kids, right? So, everything worked out." Worked out? My eye twitched so hard it could have powered a small generator. I said, "Mark, you lied about going alone. You turned your location off. You're sitting here being fed fruit like a desert sultan. What the hell is going on?" He looked around like he was searching for the right lie to pick. Then he sighed dramatically and said, "Okay, fine. I just felt trapped." Trapped. "On a family vacation," he suggested. "I needed male energy," he added. I blinked, then pointed at the 3 women. "Mark, those are not men." He had the nerve to shrug and go, "Well, they were the only ones who seemed fun." One of the girls muttered, "Bro, you said you were single." He shot her a glare so fast she actually leaned back. I felt my hands shaking again, with anger, embarrassment, heartbreak, all of it swirling so intensely I could barely keep my voice steady. I whispered, "You brought our family here. For this." And then, because Mark can never fail to dig deeper, he crossed his arms and said, "Wow. So now I can't even have hobbies? Can't I just live a little?" "Sir." Living a little is buying a new pair of shoes or trying a new restaurant, not pretending you're single in the Sahara like some reject from a dating reality show. The women gathered their bags, clearly done with this awkward circus, and one of them patted me on the shoulder, saying, "You deserve better, girl. Much better." Then they left. Watching the women walk away, the same women he flirted with, lied to, and pretended to be single for, something in me finally snapped. The version of Mark I thought I married evaporated completely. And what was left was this. A man-child with a beer, a sunburn, and 0 respect. I looked at him and said, "Get in the taxi. Now." He raised his eyebrows like I was the unreasonable one. But he followed, grumbling the whole way. He had no idea that this was only the beginning. Because what I discovered when we got back to the hotel made the desert incident look like nothing. The ride back to the resort was silent at first, except for Mark's occasional dramatic sighs, which he did loudly, like he wanted strangers on the road to feel sorry for him. At one point he muttered, "You're making a big deal out of nothing." "Right. Nothing. Just your husband playing desert bachelor while his wife watches the kids alone." When we finally got to the hotel, I rushed ahead because if I had to hear one more excuse slip out of his sunburnt mouth, I was going to spontaneously combust. I told him, "Go shower. Cool off. I need space." Yes, I used his line on him. He rolled his eyes but shuffled inside. The kids were still in daycare, thank God, so I sat on the edge of the bed and just tried to breathe. My heart hurt. My head hurt. Even my teeth hurt from clenching so hard. Then the room phone rang. And that's when everything actually spiraled. I answered, expecting the daycare or the front desk. Instead, a woman's voice said, "Is this Mark's wife?" My blood turned to ice. "Who is this?" I asked. She sighed, deeply, like she'd been holding it in all day, and said, "I'm calling about what happened earlier. You should know, he didn't just ride quads with us." My skin prickled. Every cell in my body screamed, "Don't listen," but I had to. "What do you mean?" I asked. The woman hesitated, then said, "He invited us back to his hotel room. He said he was in an unhappy marriage. He said you were basically roommates and he needed a night of freedom." My breath caught. I felt the room tilt. The woman kept talking. "We didn't go. We're not interested in married men. But he was very persistent. That's why I sent you the picture. I thought you deserved to know. I squeezed the phone so hard my fingers hurt. Thank you, I whispered. Because what else do you say when a stranger tells you your marriage is a joke? Before she hung up, she added, there's something else. He told us you're the reason he can't travel alone. That you don't trust him. Now I understand why. Then she hung up. I sat there, staring at the wall, my whole body numb. All the puzzle pieces from the past year clicked together. The boys' nights, the secretive texting, the sudden colognes, the mood swings, the defensiveness. I had blamed myself. I had assumed stress, kids, life, anything but this. But now? Now it was undeniable. Mark hadn't just lied. He had been planning to cheat. Actively trying to cheat. On our family vacation. I was shaking when he walked out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, acting like nothing was wrong. He looked at me and said, can we just forget today happened? I looked up at him, and something inside me, something deep, tired, and done, snapped into clarity. No. We would not forget. We would not pretend. Because the next words out of my mouth were the ones that finally broke the fragile illusion of our marriage. He stood there, dripping water on the carpet, looking at me like I was the one who ruined his vacation. Like I owed him an apology for catching him playing the Sahara single-man Olympics. I took a deep breath, the kind you take when you know there's no going back, and said, a woman just called the room. Mark froze. His eyes flicked to the phone. Then to me, then back to the phone. For the first time all day, his fake confidence slipped. Who? He asked, voice suddenly small. I didn't blink. One of the girls from the quad tour. He swallowed. Hard. Oh, he said. That's it. Just oh. I stood up, my hands still trembling but my voice finally steady enough to cut glass. She told me everything. All of it. Mark's face did this weird, twitchy thing, like he was trying to decide which lie would work best. Then he slammed into the worst possible choice. She's lying. I actually laughed. A sharp, humorless, exhausted laugh. Mark. She literally sent me a picture of you with them. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again like a malfunctioning fish. He finally went with, yeah, but that doesn't mean anything. I was being friendly. You know I'm a social person. No. Mark is not social. Mark is a man who thinks flirting is a personality trait. I said it plainly. You invited them to your hotel room. Boom. He flinched. Then, because he is Mark, and Mark's survival strategy is always dig deeper, he said. Okay, but nothing happened. And honestly, you're being really insecure right now. Insecure. The man who turned off his location. The man who lied about going alone. The man who told strangers he wasn't married. The man who tried to bring women back to our hotel room while our kids were downstairs coloring and eating chicken nuggets. He thought I was insecure. I felt something in my chest snap completely, not like breaking glass, but like metal bending past its limit. I stepped closer to him and said, very quietly, you didn't go there to feel free. You went there to feel single. He had no comeback for that. None. He just stared at the floor, jaw tensed, as if the carpet had personally betrayed him. Then I said the thing he didn't expect. Mark, I'm done. His head shot up. Done? With what? I stared at him. This man I'd built a life with, had children with, trusted for years, and I didn't see my husband. I saw a stranger. I'm done being embarrassed, I said. I'm done being lied to. I'm done pretending this marriage is something it isn't. He looked stunned. Actually stunned. As if the consequences of his own actions had personally offended him. Then he shook his head and said the line that still bounces around in my skull. You're not really leaving. You always cool off. That was the moment I knew he'd never change. Not because he couldn't, because he never believed he had to. But he was wrong. I swear, the minute I walked away from him, something snapped in Mark's brain. Like he realized for the first time that his actions actually had consequences. Because suddenly, Captain Cool and Clueless turned into a panicked toddler. He followed me around the hotel room like a confused Roomba, bumping into furniture and logic. Babe, wait, you're overreacting. You're making this a big deal. It was just harmless fun. I didn't think it would matter. And, my personal favorite. You know I'm bad at boundaries. Bad. At. Boundaries. As if boundaries are an advanced math concept. As if don't flirt with random women and invite them to your hotel room is complicated. I packed the kids' things calmly. Too calmly, apparently, because that scared him. Why are you packing? He asked. I didn't even look at him. Because we're not staying here with you. That hit him like a slap. He grabbed the edge of the bed and said, you're seriously leaving me alone in Morocco? I turned and looked at him. Mark, you left us alone in Morocco. He blinked. Several times. Processing, buffering, error 404. Accountability not found. Then he tried a brand new tactic, the pity plea. He sighed dramatically, rubbing his temples like I was the problem. Okay, look. I was stupid, I admit it. I didn't think you'd find out. Not. I didn't think I was doing something wrong. Just. I didn't think I'd get caught. And then, because he has no sense of timing or self-preservation, he added. And honestly, they came onto me first. The man thinks being accidentally desirable is a medical condition. I stared at him so long he shifted uncomfortably. Mark, you lied about having a wife. Multiple times. He shrugged. I didn't want to disappoint them. Disappoint them. I almost levitated out of my own body. I zipped the last suitcase and said, I'm taking the kids downstairs. You can stay here and figure out what you want to do with your boundaries. He stood there, dumbfounded, like he couldn't believe I wasn't melted by his charm and excuses. As I walked out the door, he tried one last line. Can you at least tell the kids I'm not a bad guy? I stopped for a second. Not because I felt pity, but because I felt clarity. I'm not telling them anything, I said. You're going to show them who you are. And I left. Kids' hands in mine. Heads high. Heart pounding. I didn't know what the next step was. But I knew this. It wasn't going to be another step toward him. I took the kids downstairs to the lobby, and for the first time since the trip began, the silence felt heavier than the heat outside. They were confused but quiet, sensing something was wrong. I booked another room with my own card, hands shaking but steady enough to sign my name. The receptionist looked at me with that soft, knowing expression people give women who look one breath away from falling apart. Once we got into the room, the kids immediately went to the balcony to look at the pool, completely unaware their father had just detonated our marriage like it was nothing. I finally sat on the edge of the bed, letting the anger simmer into something colder, sharper, calmer. That terrifying calm you get when you're too tired to cry anymore. Mark texted me 20 minutes later. Paragraphs. Walls of text. Apologies, excuses, half-baked explanations that contradicted each other. At one point he wrote, I didn't think flirting was cheating, and in the next message, I only lied because I was scared you'd find out. My favorite part was when he claimed he only invited those women because he felt social pressure, as if he'd been bullied into behaving like a single frat boy on spring break. I didn't respond. I didn't have the energy to coach a grown man on basic loyalty. Later, he tried calling. 10 times. Then 15. Eventually, he went from panicking to guilt-tripping. You're ruining the vacation for everyone. You made a scene. You embarrassed me. As if I should be apologizing for catching him in the act. Meanwhile, the kids kept asking if Dad was coming to dinner with us. I told them he was tired from the quad biking. Not a lie, just not the whole truth. I wasn't ready to start shattering their world too. That night, after they fell asleep, I finally allowed myself to replay everything in my head. All those solo adventures he insisted on taking. All the times he shrugged off my concerns with, relax, you're overthinking. All the moments he made me feel needy or paranoid for simply asking where he was. Every memory became a puzzle piece clicking into place, forming a picture I didn't want to see, but couldn't unsee anymore. I knew I wasn't crazy. I knew this wasn't a one-time mistake. I knew he had been choosing himself and strangers over us for a long time. And suddenly, the idea of walking away didn't terrify me. It felt possible. Real. Even freeing. As I lay there in that too-white hotel room with the air conditioner humming, I realized something. I wasn't scared of losing him. I was scared of admitting I'd already lost him long ago. When my phone buzzed again at midnight, I didn't check it. I turned it face down on the nightstand, pulled the blanket up to my chest, and let myself breathe for the first time that day. Tomorrow, I would have to decide what to do next. Tonight, I just needed to rest. The next morning, I woke up before the kids. The room was still dim, curtains drawn, that soft early sunlight pushing through the edges. For a moment, I forgot where I was, until I saw my phone blinking with notifications. Missed calls, texts, voicemails, all from Mark. I didn't open a single one. Instead, I got the kids dressed and took them down to breakfast. It felt strange, sitting there in a bright, cheerful dining hall while inside, I felt hollow. People were chatting, laughing, stacking their plates with fruit and pastries, while I quietly poured cereal for my kids and tried not to look like a woman whose marriage had just face-planted into a volcano. Halfway through breakfast, Mark appeared. He looked disheveled, sunburned, stressed. He walked straight toward our table, ignoring the fact that the kids were right there, and quietly said he wanted to clear things up. Clear things up. As if he'd spilled coffee on the counter. I didn't look at him. I told him we'd talk later, alone, when the kids went to the kids' club activity at noon. He tried to push it, but I wasn't budging, and finally, he walked away with this dramatic sigh, like I was the one causing problems. Noon came. I dropped the kids off, kissed their heads, and walked back to the hotel courtyard where Mark was waiting on a lounge chair, sunglasses on, acting like we were about to discuss something minor. I sat down across from him, and he immediately launched into a speech. Too fast, too emotional, too rehearsed. He said the women were just being friendly. He said he didn't notice that they were flirting. He said he only lied because he didn't want to ruin the vibe of the vacation. He said he thought he deserved some freedom. He said he'd been feeling unappreciated. He said I should have trusted him. Every sentence irritated me more. Not because of what he said, but because of how much he believed his own nonsense. When I asked him why he needed to lie about quad biking alone, he said, I thought you'd nag. When I asked why he gave them his number, he said, they asked first. When I asked why he hid the messages, he said, I didn't want you to overreact. He had an answer for everything. And every answer was an insult to my intelligence. At one point, he even said, I didn't actually do anything wrong, so can we just move past this? That was it. Something inside me clicked into place. Quiet, calm, final. I told him I wasn't sure our marriage could survive this. For once, he didn't have a comeback ready. He sat there, mouth open, eyes wide, stunned like I'd just slapped him with a fish. Then he said the line that sealed it all. You're really going to throw our marriage away over a misunderstanding? A misunderstanding. Like he'd misplaced his shoes. Like we were arguing about laundry. Like I hadn't seen him actively try to cheat while I was juggling sunscreen, hotel keys, and 2 kids. I stood up, took a deep breath, and told him I was done talking. That I'd finished the vacation for the kids, but after that, things were going to change. The look on his face wasn't regret. It was fear. Fear of consequences he never expected to face. And for the first time in years, I felt powerful. Mark spent the rest of the day hovering like a confused, guilty mosquito. Every time I turned around, he was pretending to just be passing by, even though his acting skills were so bad it almost made me laugh. Almost. He kept sending me voice notes, long, rambling ones where he repeated himself, contradicted himself, then circled back to the same excuses like a broken GPS. One minute, he swore nothing happened. The next he said he barely flirted. Then he insisted he didn't know the women were interested. Then he admitted he might have enjoyed the attention. It was ridiculous. If I hadn't been so hurt, I would have saved the recordings just to laugh at later. The kids were blissfully unaware, splashing in the pool and making sand castles on the beach. I focused on them, on making the rest of their vacation normal, stable, fun, because kids shouldn't pay the price for adult stupidity. But every time I looked at Mark, he looked more and more nervous, like he was waiting for his sentencing. He kept asking if we could talk again, and I kept saying no. Not out of spite, but because I genuinely had nothing left to say. Later in the evening, we went to the hotel's family-themed dinner. I sat on one side of the table with the kids, and Mark sat across from us, pretending everything was normal, laughing too loudly, making awkward jokes. His eyes kept darting to me, trying to read my face. He couldn't. I wasn't giving him anything. And then, halfway through dinner, one of the women from the quad biking incident walked into the restaurant. Mark went pale. Not a normal pale, like milk about to curdle pale. She spotted him. She waved, brightly, like they were old friends. Then she walked over. Hey, we missed you today. Are you coming out with us tonight? The air at the table froze. Mark's fork clattered to the plate. My kids looked confused. And I just sat there, watching him implode. He stuttered something about being busy. Family time, plans, sleep, sunburn, and basically every excuse known to mankind. The woman gave me a polite smile, said she hoped we were enjoying our stay, then strutted off. Mark looked like he'd been hit by a truck. The kids went back to eating. I took a sip of my drink. And for the first time since this disaster started, he was the one sweating, scrambling, panicking. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to threaten him. Reality had finally done it for me. When we got back to the room, Mark kept whispering, "Please don't leave me. Please don't take the kids. Please don't tell anyone." His fear didn't feel satisfying. It felt pathetic. Empty. Like he wasn't scared of losing me, but scared of losing the comfort of the life I built for him. And somewhere in all that mess, I realized I had stopped seeing him as my partner. He was just another responsibility I didn't want anymore. That night, for the first time in 5 years, I slept perfectly knowing I didn't owe him anything. The next morning, Mark woke up before me, which never happens unless there's free alcohol involved. He was sitting at the little hotel desk, hunched over his phone like he was trying to defuse a bomb. When he heard me move, he practically jumped to attention. "Good morning, baby," he said, voice trembling on the last word like it was afraid to be spoken. I didn't answer. I just got out of bed, brushed my teeth, and went to wake the kids. I wasn't playing the role of understanding wife anymore, and Mark could feel the shift. He hovered behind me like a ghost with body odor, opening drawers for me, offering to help with sunscreen, asking if I wanted coffee every 3 minutes. When we went down to breakfast, he pulled my chair out. He has never pulled a chair out for me in his life. The kids dug into waffles, oblivious and happy. I sat there, watching Mark fidget with his napkin like it owed him money. He kept glancing toward the restaurant entrance, terrified the quad biking girl might reappear. She didn't. But someone else did. A hotel staff member approached our table, holding a small envelope. "Mrs. Carter?" he asked. I nodded, confused. "This was left at the front desk for you." Mark swallowed so loudly, I swear the next table heard it. Inside the envelope was a handwritten note. "Hey, I'm sorry if yesterday caused problems. I didn't know he was married with kids. If you want to talk woman to woman, I'm in room 242. I froze. Mark's soul left his body. He immediately started babbling. "That's not what it looks like. She's lying. She's just jealous or confused or something, she. He could barely breathe. I calmly finished my juice. I didn't explode. I didn't cry. I didn't even go to room 242. Because I didn't need to hear anything she had to say, not yet at least. Mark was already hanging himself with his own panicked reactions. When we headed back to the room, the kids skipping ahead, Mark grabbed my arm. "Please," he whispered, desperate. "Please don't talk to her. Please don't leave me. I'll change. I'll stop. I'll do anything. I'm so stupid. God, I'm so stupid." For once, he wasn't lying. But even his honesty meant nothing to me now. Later that day, while the kids napped, I finally had the solitude to think. The fear he had yesterday had turned into full-blown paranoia. He kept checking the hallway, pacing, jumping every time someone walked by. He wasn't afraid of losing me. He was afraid of being exposed. Afraid that the version of him he created, the fun dad, the cool husband, the loyal partner, would collapse. He was terrified that I had stopped playing my part in his fantasy. And he was right. I didn't feel rage anymore. I felt done. Completely, utterly, peacefully done. And that scared Mark far more than any yelling ever could. Because he finally realized that I wasn't fighting him. I was planning my exit. Quietly. That evening, the hotel was glowing with soft orange lights, the kind that make everything look warmer than it really is. The kids wanted to swim again, so I took them down to the pool. Mark followed a few steps behind us like a guilty shadow, too scared to leave me alone but too ashamed to walk beside me. I sat on a lounge chair, watching the kids splash and laugh, pretending, for their sake, that everything was normal. Mark paced around the pool area like he was expecting someone to jump out and confront him. Every time my phone buzzed, he flinched. At one point, he finally sat next to me, elbows on his knees, staring at the ground. I never meant for it to get this far, he muttered, voice small in a way I'd never heard. I didn't look at him. It just happened, he added, as if cheating, lying, sneaking around, booking quad tours with women, and texting strangers in the middle of the night were something that just fell into his lap like gravity. He waited for me to respond. I didn't. He sighed and stood up again, pacing like his nerves were being squeezed in a vice. Meanwhile, I felt strangely calm, like the storm had passed, and now all that was left was the cleanup. But then something happened that neither of us expected. One of the hotel staff members, the same man who'd brought me the envelope that morning, approached us again. Sir, he said politely, may I speak with you? Mark's face drained of color so fast it was like someone pulled a plug. Sure, he croaked. They stepped a few feet away, but not far enough for me to miss it. The staff member spoke in low tones, and Mark nodded rapidly, hands shaking. He tried to laugh something off. The employee didn't laugh back. When they finished, Mark walked back toward me, eyes wide, jaw clenched, so tight it looked painful. What was that about? I asked, even though I already had a good idea. He swallowed, avoided eye contact, and whispered, nothing. Just a misunderstanding about the quad tour stuff. He was lying, obviously. His hands were trembling. He sat down next to me again, leaned close, and whispered, we need to talk privately. I finally turned to look at him. No, I said. Calm, firm, final. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked lost, terrified, like a man who just realized he had pushed everything too far, and now the consequences were catching up. Later that night, after the kids fell asleep, I found out what the hotel staff had told him. And that was the moment I knew everything was about to explode. For real this time. Because Mark's little fun adventure hadn't just been exposed by me. When I found out the truth about what the hotel staff had told him, it didn't come from Mark. Of course not. He was too busy spiraling in silence, pacing around our room like a cartoon criminal waiting for sirens. It came from a message slid under our door sometime after midnight. At first, I thought it was room service advertising some late-night dessert special. But when I unfolded the paper, my heart didn't just drop. It threw itself into the floor and curled up there. It was a printed screenshot. A WhatsApp conversation. Mark's name at the top. And the messages weren't between him and some random woman from the quad tour. They were between him and a local woman, someone who lived in the same city as the resort. Someone he had been messaging before the trip even started. They were planning to meet the moment we arrived, timing things around when I'd be busy with the kids. And at the bottom, a note. Handwritten. He left quickly today, but he owes me money. And I know he's with you. He can't ignore this forever. Not a threat. Not hysterical. Just cold. And exactly the kind of tone that made your stomach twist. I sat on the bed, staring at the paper, the pieces snapping together in a way I didn't want them to. The quad biking girl? A distraction. The flirting? One part of a much bigger pattern. Mark wasn't just being sleazy. He was being reckless. Messy. Sloppy. Lying to so many people he couldn't keep his story straight anymore. He had borrowed money from her. A lot, apparently. Enough for her to come looking when he ghosted. I didn't even wake him at first. I just watched him sleep, snoring lightly, face mashed into the pillow, a tiny drool spot forming at the corner of his mouth. So blissfully unaware of the chaos he'd created. And then it hit me. This man was not just cheating. He was playing with fire. Our finances, our safety, our family, everything. I finally nudged him awake. He blinked up at me, confused. Babe, what's wrong? I handed him the printed screenshot without a word. He sat up fast, too fast, and his breath hitched as he read. His face shifted from sleepy to horrified to panicked in under 5 seconds. This isn't. She's lying. She twisted everything. I didn't, babe, listen, this is not. He couldn't finish a single sentence. He couldn't lie fast enough to keep up with the truth. He stood up, paced, ran his hands through his hair, muttering, shit, shit, shit. Finally, he turned to me with wide, watery eyes. She's not dangerous, okay? She's obsessed. She's crazy. I owe her a little money, yes, but how much? I asked quietly. He froze. Not that much. How much? Silence. Then, without meeting my eyes, 5,000. I closed my eyes. Of course, he'd taken thousands from some woman he was messing around with before dragging me and the kids on a family vacation like everything was normal. He whispered, please don't leave. I'll fix it. I'll pay her back. I'll stop all of it, everything. Just don't leave. But his fear wasn't about losing me. It was about her catching up to him. About every lie crashing into every other lie until the whole tower fell on his head. Mark wasn't scared of breaking my heart. He was scared of what would happen now that everyone he deceived was waking up all at once. He'd built his little fantasy world out of half-truths, excuses, and adrenaline. And now, it was collapsing. I didn't sleep at all that night. Not because I was crying. Those tears had dried up days ago, but because Mark kept pacing our room like a trapped animal. Every few minutes he would peek through the peephole, then check the balcony, then mumble to himself. It was like watching someone unravel thread by thread. At around 2 a.m., he finally sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, breathing hard. They're here, he whispered. I didn't respond. He ran a hand through his hair. The girls from the quad tour. The ones I talked to. He said talked like it was some kind of innocent activity. One of them complained to the hotel about something. They said I led them on. Lied. Whatever. He was spiraling. I just stared at him, waiting. Mark shook his head, voice cracking. They said they're gonna show you the messages. They might have already given them to the front desk. His knee bounced uncontrollably. I should have deleted them. I should have, damn it. I blinked slowly. So, now it's catching up to you. He finally looked at me. Really looked at me. His face was pale, sweaty, frightened. This could ruin me, he whispered. I almost laughed. Ruined you? He had already ruined us, but somehow he thought he was the victim here. He started packing. Sloppily. Throwing clothes into the suitcase like he was preparing to flee the country. I stayed seated, arms folded. You're leaving? I asked. I'm just going to stay somewhere else for the night, he said, avoiding my eyes. Just until things calmed down. Things weren't going to calm down. If anything, they were about to explode. The kids stirred in their sleep, and for a moment, Mark froze. He looked over at them with this odd mix of guilt and panic, like a man who suddenly remembered he was a father only because his life was falling apart. He zipped the suitcase, grabbed his wallet, and headed for the door. Don't go to the front desk, he warned. Just stay in the room. Please. I'll fix this. He left so fast he didn't even close the door properly. The hallway light filtered into the room, a thin slice of brightness cutting across the carpet. I walked over and shut it myself. And for the first time since the vacation began, I felt safe. Not because he was protecting me, but because he was finally gone. Just then, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. If you're Mark's wife, you deserve to know everything. He told us he was single. We're in the lobby if you want to talk. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I simply stared at the message and exhaled. Because this wasn't an affair anymore. Wasn't an accident. Wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a pattern. A lifestyle. A choice. A man who lived like consequences didn't apply to him. Part of me wanted to meet them. The other part already knew enough. I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the quiet breathing of my kids. And that was when reality hit me. Mark wasn't running because he was guilty. He was running because this time, he wasn't in control of the story. And the people he lied to weren't backing down. Tomorrow, I'd have to face everything. But tonight, I finally slept deeply for the first time in years.